I was answering Slacks in the bathtub. I was working at 11 o'clock at night. Your business directly dictates your schedule. You've just been so booked and so busy that now you have to work on all the administrative work at the end of the day. It's just faster if I do it. Ding, ding, ding. This is literally one of those moments. They stack, they stack, they stack. And before we know, we have literally built a wall. Business does not feel light. It doesn't feel fun. It doesn't feel energetic. It feels a little bit heavy. What am I no longer willing to sacrifice? If I doubled your business tomorrow, would your life get better or worse? Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, we are talking all about how to understand if your business actually still fits your life. And this is something that I wanted to talk about because I have had countless conversations with people who are not really sure if it's that they don't like their business in the sense that they've fallen out of love with it, in the sense of the business in itself, or is it actually a matter of the structure of how the business is happening or the way that it's running is not something that you enjoy anymore? And so in today's conversation, what I want to break down is number one, signs or feelings that may come up in you that could potentially be an indicator that you actually have a business that does not support and does not actually fit or is not in harmony with your life. Second, I want to talk a little bit with you about what are some of the decisions or some of, I guess, those pivotal points that are experiences we have where we can go left or we can go right. And I want to help you to know what those are so that when they come up within your life, when they come up within your business, that you understand if you go left, you are choosing a business that does not fit your life. And so I want to break down what some of those different situations or common pivot points are that cause us to go down the wrong path. And most importantly, I want to give you a framework of exactly an exercise that you can do of how to audit your existing business to really know what are the things that need to change, need to adjust, or maybe just truthfully need some reflection and some time dedicated to them so that you can go into it and actually make some refinements to ensure your business actually fits your life. So with that being said, let's get into it. I literally have a literal pages of notes because I have worked with agency owners, I've worked with coaches, consultants, course creators, digital products, and I've worked with people who are in a lot of transition in their life, meaning maybe you started your business 3 years ago, 1 year ago, 5 years ago, like for me, 7 years ago, and you in your life are at a different place. And also, you have transitioned through many different stages. Maybe you started off being single and now you're married. Maybe you went from being married and now you have, your first child on the way, or maybe you've grown and expanded your family to multiple children. And if I want you for a second to think back to day one, meaning you 5 years ago, you even maybe 7 or 10 years ago, the reality is most likely I'd put money on the fact that your lifestyle is very different than it was when you lived on your own. And what most of us don't think about is that sometimes when we are at those initial stages of building our business, we built it on what our values were then, on what our vision of our life was then, on our, priorities, on our schedule, on our, most importantly for all of you moms, on your capacity then. So one of the things that's really important is that as we transition, as we evolve through these different stages and values and priorities in our life, are we actually taking adequate time to reflect on the business and say, does this business truly align with what you're now experiencing, with your current capacity, with your current schedule, with your current reality and routines? And so one of the things I want to first dive into is really what are those signs? What are things that maybe you could audit right now that you're feeling, you're experiencing, you're seeing that could potentially be an alarm going off that says, hey, your business does not fit your life anymore. So, one of the first ones is that I see probably the most common, I would say, across every single person that has had this aha moment in their business is that they have this kind of overarching dread. Like you have this dread of going in to open your Slack. You have this dread of going into opening your emails or hopping on that first Zoom call on a Monday. There's just kind of this overlay of resistance that you're experiencing. And oftentimes when you get through that workday or maybe through a week or even at the end of the month, you think, oh, I just really need a rest. Or you take the weekend off to rest, maybe even take a week off at times to rest. But the rest ultimately doesn't really restore you. If anything, it potentially actually makes you anxious. Like I had a client who recently was going through this awareness in her own business, and she took a break from her business. And she was like, Kate, the entire time I was thinking about what I was missing, what was waiting for me. And it made her realize that the way that she was doing business was just not going to work anymore. So the rest was actually filled with anxiety. It wasn't necessarily something where she came back feeling restored. The other thing that this is kind of connected to is this feeling of you don't even really necessarily, with that rest, truly feel like you're allowed to have quote unquote time off. Even when you're off, whether that's in the evenings, the weekends, the vacations you take, the breaks you take over Christmas, for example, you probably don't feel like you're actually off. You're kind of always a little bit on. And with this, it feels just overall like it has this level of heaviness on you. Business does not feel light. It doesn't feel fun. It doesn't feel energetic. It feels a little bit heavy, and it feels like something that's you're bracing for impact when you're going into it. And so this is kind of more of the energy awareness that you'll see. Now, if we go more though on the contrast, if instead we go a little bit more into, let's just say, schedule or time, one of the things that I note is that people who are completely controlled in their life by their business is that your business directly dictates your schedule. So if you want to take a half day, if you want to take a Monday off, a Wednesday off, that you don't feel like you have capacity. You really are trying to say, okay, well, I have that doctor's appointment I want to go to. I have that family function that I want to drive to. I have, potentially just something you want to do for fun, and you go to look at your schedule and you're like, I can't because I have this client call and I have this team meeting and I have this commitment that I'm responsible for. So I literally can't do that. So your entire life is dictated around your business's schedule. And with this, oftentimes, because your schedule is potentially very demanding, you have a lot of commitments, there's a lot being asked of you. There is oftentimes that you might, sign on to your business at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 a.m., whatever time you start, and you finish and you feel like, you know what, I just got through my calls, I got through my meetings, but now I need to catch up, which is the fact that you've been working all day. You've just been so booked and so busy that now you have to work on all the what we kind of consider to be administrative work at the end of the day. And oftentimes, what this means is that you might close your laptop, you're done with the meetings, but you're like, now I have to think about going in, and you're like, well, I have to kind of open that back up because I have Slack and I have emails to respond to and I have feedback for someone and reviews and checking in on client files, and the list goes on and on. So even though technically your quote unquote workday is done, meaning, the calendar of meetings has stopped, you're not needing to be face to face on Zoom, or you're not posting on social media anymore today, it doesn't really mean that you're off, because the rest of the evening feels like it's filled with administrative work. And because of that, there's really no true off switch, right? You start at 9 a.m. and then you're kind of working all day. And then even though client facing or audience facing stuff is done, you work a little bit after hours, after you said you'd be done. And then you have enough to unwind just a little bit before you go to bed. And then the entire thing starts again the next day. And so this type of schedule, this type of demand for most people makes them feel like they're not really moving at all. They're kind of in maintenance mode. You're not necessarily feeling like you're getting a lot accomplished, even though you feel like you've literally never been more busy. And so it feels like it doesn't make sense, because you're like, I feel so drained. I feel like I did so many calls. I feel like I did a lot of stuff, and yet I feel like I accomplished, in the sense of outcomes for me and for my business, not a lot. And so because of that, it creates this strain, which is why some of that feeling going into the weekend can feel anxious, and also going into Monday can feel anxious. Now, one of the things that is a common analogy that I hear, or that I often explain to people and they go, oh my God, that's how I feel, is that people feel like, and you may resonate with this for your business, that your business is like a prison, but like that you created. You're like, I offered a one-on-one coaching package, but now I have lots of Zoom calls, or I offered to be on those strategy meetings, or I built myself into the system of doing the feedback, but now I'm drowning in feedback. And so sometimes what we do is we build ourselves into the business. We make these micro decisions that over time compound. And I want you to think about each of those decisions literally like a brick. Okay. Each decision that you're making to be like, yeah, I'll hop on that meeting. Well, now you've set a precedent that you're on those. And yeah, I'll answer that quick Slack. And now your team's not the one answering it. You're always somehow involved in the communication. Each of those little decisions, when we're not careful and we're not conscious, ultimately is literally laying bricks around us. And before we know it, those bricks of all those small decisions, they stack, they stack, they stack. And before we know, we literally are covered. We have literally built a wall, a little box around us of all those small decisions that compounded to create resistance against you being free. And so, what I want to make sure you know is that with those decisions and with that feeling of being trapped in your business, that oftentimes they're not this one big thing. A lot of people perceive that for their business doesn't support them, or if you feel like your business is not supporting you, I want you to know that this is oftentimes not like one big strategy that you integrated or one big thing that you did. It's oftentimes little micro decisions that we feel like are not a big deal, but that over time compound to feel like a very big deal. So that's something that I want you to know is if you feel trapped, this is not necessarily a big thing that's going to happen. Sometimes it's just accumulation of a bunch of small things. So oftentimes when we have this demand, we have this pressure on us, we feel like we have, this expectation of us in a given week. Many people will feel like they're just being paid a really high paid salary in their position. They're not necessarily operating like a CEO or like a leader. And this is why many people who come to me will say, I really want to start operating like a true CEO. What that means to me and what that lands as is if you want to operate as a CEO, it means that you truly want to feel like you're in the driver's seat. You want to feel like you're not having the business determine your actions, thoughts, and feelings, but that you're determining based off of your decision that day, based on your leadership, based on your vision, what's going to happen. And that determines the actions, the feelings, behaviors. So most people, when they desire to be in the CEO role, it's because the business right now does not make them feel like they're in a CEO role. You might feel like you're like, I just have a really high paid position amongst everybody else that I work with. But ultimately, I'm still putting in the 8 hours a day, and I still feel like I have an ongoing list of tasks that are required to be done by me. So if you also feel potentially that you have outgrown the business, but it has not caught up yet. So sometimes, especially for those of you who are doing a lot of personal development, if you are someone who's very self aware, very self reflective, you're a self starter, you're constantly learning and expanding your knowledge, what that means is that we often talk about this that a business, your lid of your leadership has increased. So this was something that was actually passed on from one of my previous mentors, Xander. And he had explained to me this great quote, which is the business will never exceed the lid of its leadership. So what that means is that you literally, I want you to think about like a Rubbermaid, like Thanksgiving Tupperware that you get from your grandma, okay? Nothing can exceed the lid of that container or it overflows. It doesn't work. But if you get a larger container, the lid is still again the cap, but yet we have more capacity. So the lid will always be similar to you and to your business, the cap of its leadership. The lid of the business is the lid of its leadership, which ultimately is you. So when you expand your business in the sense of your personal development, you expand your knowledge, you expand your expertise, your skills. When you do that, your business has to catch up. And I want you to think about like that Rubbermaid literally being filled. Sometimes people feel like my level, my lid has increased, but my business has not caught up yet. And so there's this frustration that you're at a certain place, but your business is not matching in the sense of results or outputs to the place that you feel you are. And most importantly, that most people feel when they're having resistance against their business is that you really feel that if you look at this business in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're like, this is not going to work. And I want to just like take a second to explain that I have also had this feeling. So I don't want you to think that this is something that means that you're a bad leader, a bad owner or founder. This does not mean you're a bad CEO. This does not mean you're a bad business owner. Okay. I have had times where I looked at my business and again, old me was like single, like excited, boss babe energy, just like hustle culture. Like I was just like push, push, push. And then I fast forward and I started thinking about what my life was going to look like having a family and being a mom. And I started to look at my schedule of the fact that at that phase of my business, when I was just getting it started, I was working at 11 o'clock at night. I was answering slacks in the bathtub. Like I was doing crazy things to be able to scale this business. I was just working nonstop. And so when I thought about and I kind of had this aha moment of, okay, I want to be a mom. And I ideally, God willing, do not want to typically most likely have one child. I would love to have like a small baseball team would be like my dream. Call me the Duggars. I don't know. I literally would love to have a large family. So when I think about knowing that that's something that I want and something that I desire, I started to look at the business and I thought, well, this isn't going to work because I can't be doing this level of capacity when I want to have a family that big. And so I started to, even myself, the pieces of my business started to crack because I realized this is good right now, but this is not going to be good in 10 years. This is not going to be good in 5 years potentially if I don't change something. So you also may feel this resistance of even though your business is helping you right now, you are really rooted and anchored into the future as I was. And it's when that aha moment hits you of this is not going to work and you know something needs to change. So the last is more of I would say an operational piece, which is the fact that, your revenue and all of the money in the business is deeply deeply rooted in your presence. So basically the level of which you show up or your energy is directly correlated to the energy or the outputs of the business financially. It also can mean that any break that you take or any kind of pause that you have or step back that you take within the business typically means that the business's income or results are going to take a dip as well. And you probably feel that if you need to grow, you associate more growth with more complexity. I hear this all the time, especially from agencies. They will say, well, if I want to grow more, that means more team members, it means more systems, it means more expenses. And so there's a lot of this forecasting, this future vision of growth is tied to a lot of complexity. And so when they think about growing, they see it as complicated. And so as a result, there's kind of this resistance to wanting or considering going there. Ultimately, the very, very common one is that you are the be all end all in the business. You are the final decision maker. You are the person who is required really in a lot of the pieces in order for the machine to function. And so with these aha moments, these symptoms, these feelings, these awarenesses that come up, the question is how the heck did we get here, right? Is what most people want to know. How did this happen? Because many of us are working in the business day to day and we think, well, how is it possible that I've built this business knowing what I wanted? Why or how did this business get built that this is now my reality? And again, this is a byproduct of small decisions. This is not a matter of started a new year, new fresh Google Doc, and you mapped out this business that didn't fit your life. That is never how it goes. Every person who maps out that new year, new me is typically going to map out the revenue target. They say, I want to have this many hours off. I want to have, this many days a week that I work. That's like the perfect vision. That's not when it happens because that vision typically is very connected to where it is you want to go. It happens on the Tuesday morning when something needs a decision about an offer. And it happens in the brainstorm 1 hour meeting that you have for a new offer. And, what kind of support do we want to offer? It happens when your client requests something of you and you break your boundaries. It's these little micro moments. And so I want to also break down what are some of those decision moments, those two pathways. And literally how I want you to visualize this is in your business, where you want to go. Literally, I want you to think about this like Google Maps. You have where you are right now and where it is you want to go. If you are somebody that goes to make a turn and you can go left or right, the one that goes right goes toward the life that you want. The one that goes left takes you a very different place. It's not the one that supports your life or your business. With that, you choose left, okay? One left, you're not that far off from getting to the destination you want to get to. 2 lefts, 20 left, 25, 45, 75 choices going left, you could end up in an entirely different province or entirely different country if you kept going left, even though everything needed you to go right. So this is why I think a lot of us get the surprise of feeling trapped in our business, this surprise of like, why do I feel like my business is so resistant with my lifestyle? It's often because there was just these pivotal moments that you weren't thinking of this as a big decision. You were thinking of it as just a small decision in your week and that it wasn't going to have this massive significant impact. But at the time, because we're so in the weeds and we can't zoom out and see where we are, we don't realize we're way off track in our maps. We've gone way left somewhere else compared to where we were supposed to go and our ideal destination, which was right. So the first is really in the mindset bucket. And I would say the more common denominator of decisions are typically rooted for any of you, and you know if this fits for you because I am self proclaimed someone working on boundaries. If you are someone who struggles with boundaries, you probably at times have chosen to go quote unquote left, or you've chosen to make a decision that doesn't support the life you want because the other alternative meant actually having boundaries. So, for example, team member is responsible to do something. They need to have a strategy call with a client or they need to send off an email. There's something they need to do. And someone asks, say, well, can you look at this email or can you, help me to prep notes for this call? If you have ever said something along the lines of, it's just faster if I do it. Ding, ding, ding. This is literally one of those moments. And and you can probably think of a scenario right now where you stepped in and you're like, never mind, I'll do it. It's just faster if I do it. Number one, I want to explain that this is probably true. It probably is faster if you do it. But just because it's faster that you did it doesn't mean you should be doing it. It's something that by teaching it, by delegating it, by allowing someone else to help you is giving you the life you want. So in those moments, we think we're so scrambled. We got so much to do today. I don't have time to be teaching this. I don't have time to delegate it. I'll just do it. What you have just done is you have integrated yourself into a process that originally was designed to not have you in it, that you've been trying to get out of, that you've been trying to delegate. That was the whole reason you hired Sarah on your team. So when we get out of it and then we end up back in it because of lack of boundaries or lack of ability to release or to be unattached or to release perfectionism, right? This is what, as a small decision, now that one meeting you got involved with, because, oh, it's just faster if I do it, means your team member lost the ability to learn, which means what do you think is going to happen the next time that she also has another meeting? Ding, 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 she needs you. So this, again, small little pieces. Also really common in agencies, for example, or even in coaching, if someone has a piece of work that they need reviewed or they have a file that needs feedback. And with this, you feel like you always need to be the person who's giving the feedback. You're the last piece of the filter. You're like, I have to have my say. Part of that is rooted in mindset and the fact that, again, we struggle to delegate, we struggle to release perfectionism. We're scared. What if someone doesn't catch something that I would catch? But again, it keeps you in the process. It adds another brick to that little circle around you. And staying in execution. This is one I see all the time. People who really want to stay in the delivery because they're like, I really care about my clients. I really want to be involved. And listen, I coach my clients. So like I no longer have co-coaches. I used to. I no longer have co-coaches. But one of the things that I did to ensure that when I was going back into being the core coach in my offers. So if you coach with me in my mastermind, I'm your coach. If you coach with me in private, I am your coach. But the difference is the way I structured my offers became something that I actually built around my life. So, for example, when I decided to remove the co-coaches, I knew that I was going to have one-on-one calls in some capacity back on my calendar. Now, I am not somebody who wants to live on Zoom all day, every day. So what I have now is I literally, again, built my structure to have coaching calls on one week. And then in the next week, I have nothing. Like I have 2 group calls. And other than that, I have no responsibilities that week. If I wanted to sit on a beach in Tahiti that week, technically speaking, I could. So It's on one week, off the next week, on one week, off the next week. And so for me, even though I coach all the clients in my mastermind and my private clients, it's not something where I feel like I'm constantly living on calls Monday to Friday. It's actually technically between all my clients, 6 days a month. So very realistic for me in the sense of scalability. With this, okay, this one is a little bit deeper, but stay with me. You are tolerating and you are normalizing exhaustion because it means that you are still involved. And as a result, it validates your value. So, this is a little bit deeper, but you will know if this is something that you experience. Have you ever gone to delegate something or you've gone to release a responsibility or to give somebody a task? And when you did, you thought, "Well, what do I do now?" Because like they're taking care of those outcomes. That person's handling my marketing. That person is my VA or operations person who handles the back end. What am I supposed to be doing? Right. And oftentimes, especially for those of you who are scaling, potentially you're at multiple six figures and you want to go to seven or multiple seven, this is very, very common for you. You will create such great delegation, such great releasing of all of this. And when you do, you for a moment in time have freedom. For a moment in time you have flexibility. But then when you have this moment of, well, what am I supposed to do? And you haven't created this new role for yourself, this new position, this new identity of your role in the business, if you haven't created that, the first thing that most people do is they get sucked back in to the delivery. And that's because you want to feel validated. You want to feel important. You want to feel like you're part of the process. You want to feel like you have a role in some way, shape, or form in the pipeline of what's going on. You want to get in there, right? You don't want to be in the leadership role. You want to be the manager. You want to be in the weeds with everybody. And so oftentimes many people will put themselves back into the fire, put themselves back into the weeds, because in a deeper layer, there is this aspect of the fact that it makes you feel important and it makes you feel valued and you get a kickback from it. You get a feedback loop from your involvement in the weeds and in the fire. So there is not just these, tactical strategy pivot points or decisions. There's also the mindset pieces that will cause us to not always act in accordance with our highest vision of what we want for our life. The other bucket is marketing. And this is actually something that I will say I was so close to going down the rabbit hole of. Okay, so if any of you market on TikTok, you know that most people who market on TikTok are oftentimes posting TikToks like literally, I would probably say like twice or three times a day, which is a lot. That's a lot of videos. So when TikTok came out, I did the classic TikTok, routine. I had 2 to 3 videos going out a day, and I was like, okay, if this is what the experts say work, this is what we're gonna do. Again, similar to many people, I didn't ask myself, is that something that I am interested in building my business on? Is that a foundation that I feel I can sustain? Is that a way that I want to be able to grow my business? Do I feel like I can do that? And so, one of the things that I was conscious of is once I had that awareness that I was like, ooh, this is really not feeling in flow for me, was actually when I started this podcast, because I knew I needed talking videos of me. But I was like, okay, I don't want to sit and film 30 videos a week, because that's literally what I was doing. On Saturdays, I would have all these notes and I would film 30 videos every single Saturday that would go out during the week. And I thought, if this is what it means to scale my business, I don't know if this is for me. And so, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that you may be choosing a marketing strategy. You might be choosing a marketing blueprint that works for somebody else, but realistically, it doesn't work for you. And so, if you're somebody who's super, super busy and you feel like maybe you've got a lot going on at home or you have crazy schedules or a lot of instability, to be honest, making I go live every day because so and so coach told me to go live every day at 10 a.m. To be honest, going live at 10 a.m. when you have kids that are, at home with you potentially, and they're not, at school or in daycare yet, like we don't know what's going to happen at 10 a.m. Maybe that's not actually the most supportive strategy for you and for your life. And so instead, we try to make it fit, right? We try to say, well, I have to do the 3 TikToks a day, or I have to go live at that time. Like this is the way. And we don't ask ourselves, does it fit? So a big mistake is that you may be choosing a marketing strategy or approach that isn't considerate of your lifestyle, which is part of why you're not consistent, not because you don't desire to be consistent with your marketing. Also, for those of you who are building a brand and you are building marketing that is rooted on you being the magnet, when you and I both know you don't want to be the magnet. There's two groups here. There's people who are okay being the personal brand. They're okay being a founder led piece within their marketing. And listen, I think founder led content is fantastic. I'm by no means putting down founder led content. But you have to also ask yourself, if you're building the entire brand that you're the face, if you're building the brand that you're the value, are you okay with that long term, not just short term? And I think a lot of people see the impact, they see the ROI, we see the excitement that can happen and the revenue that can happen by making you the focus, which is true. But you have to also ask yourself, is that actually sustainable long term? Can you continue to be the face of the brand, or are we going to reach a wall here where it all has to be revised anyway? The other thing that I see a lot of is people not using reusable assets in marketing. So a lot of it is very reactionary and it's very short lived. So, again, trends work in marketing, but if you're somebody who's built, for example, your impact or your traction or your visibility off of things like trends, that's not really going to be something sustainable because, again, it's very reactive. You can't necessarily repurpose trends. If I, for example, have today's topic and I have the notes of it, this can be a podcast. It can go on YouTube. It's going to get chopped up and put onto YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. It's also potential to be chopped up and put into carousels on my personal feed. It can be sent out in a newsletter of an email. That only technically, my filming here is 1 hour. So it's also looking at what can be leveraged in marketing. Or are you creating pieces that really last for 24 hours or they last for 2 weeks, maybe in the sense of their reach or their span, but they're not ongoing, evergreen living pieces for you? Again, thinking through these decisions are going to be things that will help to know what's going to support you in your life. And the other piece we see this on another bucket is sales. Okay. So if you are somebody who feels like, and I want to be very, very transparent, I've done this. So again, I'm not talking from my high horse. I'm talking because I've learned this the hard way. If you have ever said yes to clients that you knew were going to be problem clients, it is me. So I have had clients that came through an application. And I remember one of our team members had been the one who did the triage calls, which were basically like a 10-minute call before the call with me. And they would ask a series of questions and then they would go to the call with me if they were qualified. And so there were many times that people would be on that call and then my team member was like, Kate, like, I really don't think this is someone we should take on. And again, because I was just like, yes, 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 I was like, yeah, I can help them. Like, I really was like, they're a service-based business. Sure, I can help them. So then I get into the service. Let me just say, to be clear, she was right every time. Okay. She was right every time. I was trying to like just accept and take in and more. And ultimately, those 2, 3, 4 clients that I allowed in who should not have been allowed in from the get go because they screamed red flags, it was something that took a lot of strain from me. It took a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of mental distraction. Like those clients, I could have served 15 clients for the same time as like 4 people over many years who were very, very, very needy in the sense of the red flags that we saw in the sales process also came up in the service itself. So with that, I now recognize that I'm like, I have to be very cognizant of just, am I saying yes to a sale because I'm like, great sales, let's keep scaling? Or does this actually make sense for me in the sense of what it's going to take? The other thing that is also a big strain is customized scope. If you are somebody who feels like you're always customizing for clients, custom contract, custom services, custom everything, it really, you need to have some baseline of a through line of your services, because if everything feels custom, it's already in itself going to create a lot of bloat in your business and for you. And even people who are, spending tons of time on Slack and Voxer and Telegram and emails and endless calls, like it just feels like the support structure is kind of endless. There's really no cap or structure to it. And so as a result, what you had on your contract of support is definitely feeling very different than what you're actually giving in support. If you are selling ongoing discounts and super, super extended payment plans, and you're constantly allowing for all these customizations with price, that is something that, again, is overextending you. It's going against what is considered to be a standard you've set and a clarity of where you want the business to go and what the expectations are. Now, the last as well would be the actual offer itself. So, the offer itself, if you are somebody that needs to have your face live in any way, if you have to be live on calls with clients, if you have to be on kickoff calls, if you have to be on group calls, if you need to do any live facilitation, meetings, discussions, and you feel like I'm always being required live, and yet you want a non-call based business, that's again something that if you build the entire structure to say, okay, well, clients want me live and clients want this and clients want that, clients are going to want a lot of things, but what makes sense for your business and what actually allows you to have the life that you want? If you're not wanting to be on meetings, you can set a standard with all your clients and say, hey, moving forward, I'm not doing meetings. So I will do like asynchronous communication. I will, send a Loom or I'll send a video, but like I'm not doing scheduled meetings any longer. And if that's something that supports your life, you 1,000% can integrate a structure like that. As well as when you feel like you have all different offers that all in some way, even though they're different flavors, require you to be involved. And as a result, you feel this pressure to keep those offers alive, even though they don't serve you. So I see this with people who have, agency offers or coaching offers that they keep because they convert well, they're in high demand, people want them, but they also are literally the source of the biggest strain for you and for your business. And so if you don't change the offers to also be structured for you and for what you want, you're kind of, the more you sell of them, the deeper you're digging your hole. So these are literally just the start. There is probably 105 that I could list, but these are just some of the more common ones that I see amongst the service-based businesses that I help. So the contrast of what we think is, okay, I kind of have some of these feelings with my business. I feel a little bit of resistance. I feel the dread. I kind of have the Sunday scaries. I have that coming up. On the contrast, I have made these wrong left turns. I have made the wrong decision. I have gone down the wrong path. And in reflecting on some of these situations, I've definitely done some of those. The question is, how do we, reroute on our maps, if you will, to go back to our example? How do we reroute to get back to the destination of where it is we truly want to go, the actual life that we want to have? And so I'm going to break down for you a life fit framework, which basically is a series of questions that you can ask yourself. And what you're going to do is you're going to literally rate these 1 to 10. So if you want to be a plus student about these, you can absolutely write these down as I'm saying them and literally mark 1 to 10 or a scale of 1 to 10 for each one for yourself. But if you also are walking the dog, if you're working right now, or if you're in the car listening, what I want you to do is just in your mind, as I'm saying these, ask yourself these questions back. And you can grade yourself in your mind as well. Even just the reflection of this is very likely to bring up an aha moment or an awareness point that in itself can give you some clarity going into tomorrow, going into this week. So before we dive into the actual audit, the one step we have to take is actually defining what is the destination, right? So if we think about that maps example, where are we going? And for some people, the reason we get off track is because we actually have changed where we want to go. So just like me, I was making all my decisions around like boss babe, like author, podcaster, speaker, all this stuff of that I wanted. I was like, I want to just like take over the world when it comes to business. And I was so deeply in that vision that I only made decisions in that type of pathway. That's the route we were going on. But when I started to then shift and open my vision to being a mom and having a big family and not wanting to be working all the time, I then, because I switched my vision, realized that things were out of alignment. So if I had stayed with that path, if that was the route that I wanted to go to, technically speaking, my business was fine. It was just because I started to think about and reflect on having a family that I wanted to start to shift things. So we have to first define what actually is the life that you want. So question I want you to ask yourself is, how many hours per week do you want to work in the vision that you have? Are there certain days you want to work? Are there a certain amount of hours you want to work? So, for me, I always had envisioned dropping my kids off at school and picking them up at the end of the day, and that my work had to fit inside those hours. That was like the structure. I wanted to be able to always drop them off in the morning and always pick them up at the end of the day. That was like my ideal dream life. And once they came home, I wasn't working was the goal. If I could have a scalable business with that many hours, that was like perfect dream for me. So, what days or times are non-negotiable for you? So, how many hours a week do you want to work in the business? And are there any days or times that are potentially negotiable for you? Okay. What are non negotiable? What level of flexibility do you need or do you want within the business? Okay. So, what level of flexibility do you need or do you want within your business? Now, this is the best one, I think. What am I no longer willing to sacrifice? What am I no longer willing to sacrifice? And for me, that question is something that I would invite you to go even deeper on reflecting in, because I think that question of what am I not willing to sacrifice? Some common answers have been, I don't want to sacrifice time with my husband. I don't want to sacrifice time with my kids. I don't want to sacrifice my sleep. I don't want to sacrifice my joy and my actual enjoyment or my happiness factor of my life. I don't want to, and you just want to brain dump. What, maybe an easier question for you right now is, what are you currently sacrificing? That's another way of asking the same question. So in the future vision, what do you not want to sacrifice? Or in this current version and season of your business, what are you sacrificing, if anything? I don't want you to also find something that's wrong if there's nothing wrong. That's actually a good sign. Maybe your business fits your life, which is great. But if you do feel in any capacity like you are sacrificing something, I want you to ask yourself what that is. And ultimately, in the future version, what do you not want to sacrifice? So, with this vision, this destination of where we want to go, I now want you, and I'm going to ask some questions, and I want you for each one in your mind to say, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. And these are based on your current reality that you're scaling them 1 to 10. Okay. Not your future one. These are all based on your current reality. So the first is going to be the L. Again, the framework itself is called Life Fit. And the first one is L. So, which basically stands for lifestyle alignment. Does your calendar reflect how you want to live? 1 to 10. And again, just want you to, whatever comes first to mind, do not judge yourself. Don't be like, well, maybe if I, what if I, no, we're not trying to negotiate with ourselves. We're going instant, whatever your subconscious brings to you is exactly the right answer. So, does my calendar reflect how I want to be living? 1 to 10. So, 1 being the least correlated to the life you want, and 10 being very correlated to the life that you want. Can I take time off without chaos? 1 to 10. 1 being not really, and 10 being absolutely. Okay. So, you guys can start to see the scale now. Does the business respect my personal season? Okay. So, question number 1 was, does my calendar reflect how I want to live? Can I take time off without chaos? Does the business respect personal seasons? Okay. So, in this bucket, you want to ask for each one of those 1 to 10. And even as we're going through, you might find you're like, ooh, I'm a lot of 6s or I'm a lot of 4s. Even just this, as I said, without writing anything down, without going any further, is in itself going to be great reflection for you. The second bucket of life fit is the I, which is income sustainability. Okay. So the 3 questions are, is income in your business right now stable or fairly reactive? 1 to 10. How dependent is revenue on your personal presence? That can be inside the business or in marketing. 1 to 10. Can revenue continue if you step back? 1 to 10. Okay. So you're probably already seeing some aha moments happening here. And that's the point. We want to start to just have a real honest conversation. And this is just the step 1. Okay. So we've gone through the LI. The third here is the F of life fit, which is the framework. So the F stands for function and flow. Does the business basically run without you over functioning to make it happen? Okay. So the first question is, where are you the bottleneck? So in this brain dump, think for a second here. Where are areas, if you were to list maybe 2 or 3, that you feel you are the bottleneck? Who owns the decisions in your business besides you? And it's totally okay if you want to say nobody. Okay. Are your current processes and systems documented or often memory based? Okay. Now we're going to go into E of life fit, which is your energy and your role alignment. Okay. You have with this the question basically of ultimately this stage of the framework means, does your role that you have actually align with how you want to be showing up? So the first question is, what drains versus energizes me? Okay. What drains versus energizes me? Am I operating in the right identity? Are you operating as a leader? Are you operating as the CEO? Do you feel you are? Does the business require me to stay small in order to work? Okay. So, what drains versus energizes me? Am I operating in the right identity? And does the business require me to stay small in order to work? Now we get into the fit portion of the framework. So, the F is flexibility and seasonality. So, can workload in your business be adjusted by season? Scale 1 to 10. Scale of 1 to 10, can your offers pause or shift? Can the offers you have easily or consistently be able to pause or shift? And is capacity in your business fixed or fairly adaptable? Do you feel that capacity is a fixed amount of capacity or it's pretty fluid? Okay. So those are the 3 questions of the F, which is flexibility and seasonality. Got 2 more. The I is infrastructure and support. So 3 questions. Are your systems clear and repeatable? Is delegation in your business effective? 1 to 10. And do the tools that you use right now reduce or add complexity? Scale 1 to 10. And lastly, we have T, which is about the trajectory of your business and the longevity of it. First question is, does this business that you have still work to support your life in the way that it's structured in 3 to 5 years? Right now, if you were to take the exact model you have right now in 3 to 5 years, would it support your life? Does growth of this business improve life or actually reduce it? Okay, so growing your business, if I doubled your business tomorrow, would your life get better or worse, your personal life? And lastly, does success of this business for you feel expansive and energetic and exciting, or does it feel kind of heavy? So, with these questions, what I would invite you to do is number 1, beside each, to reflect. And again, think even just back to, even if you were kind of thinking in your head and reflecting on these, how many were 2s? How many were 8s? If you were on the lower end of the scale, what I want you to do is I want you to think about what was probably the most alarming or the biggest aha moment. If you just think quickly right now, what was the lowest score? What was maybe something that you thought, well, I thought 2 for that, which was the lowest of all of them. Or that was the one that kind of stopped me for a second. I thought, whoa, actually, maybe not. Think of that one. What I want you to think about is just looking to put some attention into redesigning that. One thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to redesign and redo your entire business. That is not the goal. I am not asking you to throw out your business and let's make a whole new blueprint. That's actually not what I want you to do. I want you to pick the area of the biggest constraint, which is why this reflection is important. Because if you go through a certain department, if it's marketing, if it's sales, you're having the awareness, maybe it's with your team, you have the awareness, that's where you start. You don't throw the whole thing out and start over. We're just going to go to the point of the biggest constraint, and we're going to look to investigate and get information and evidence of what there is the resistance factor, what there feels like it's kind of not working. It's not in flow for me. And I want to invite you to kind of redesign that aspect, to look to paint a new vision of what that could look like. And even with this reflection, I also want to say that this is not something that you should just be doing in this moment as you listen. This is also something you can come back to. You can save this to come back in 6 months, in 12 months, and say, okay, I'm going to redo this reflection to see where my business is at now. Because as I said, with my life, when I was, in my boss babe era, I really believed that like I had everything I ever wanted. I was like, everything's going where I want to go. I was speaking. I had, the offers I wanted, the clients I wanted, the revenue I wanted, the team I wanted. Everything was smooth sailing. But if I started to think about being a mom with that structure or wanting to have the schedule that I wanted when I was going to be a mom, I was like, ooh, well, that actually doesn't work. So it was something that when I had this shift of vision caused me to come back and reflect and to get a new plan. So I want to be clear, I have the same offers that I will have when I have kids. I have the same team that I have when I have kids. These are small little refinements. This is not me throwing out my whole business and starting over. It's about looking at the areas that would create resistance and then tweaking those so we can get things back in flow for you or in more harmony within your business. So, with that, I hope today was helpful for you. I also want to invite you that if you are someone who, upon reflecting today, you're like, okay, so my business is definitely not in alignment with the life that I want. That is okay. We talked about obviously the starting point today. Of course, if you are someone who feels there's multiple things, maybe this is not a small thing in your business, but it's something a little bit bigger, and you are looking for support with that, you know where to find me. This is literally what I do with people every single day, is helping them to scale businesses that they enjoy and that they're excited by and that support their lives, whether you are wanting to be that boss babe on stage or whether you're wanting to be that badass mom who's also scaling a business. Whatever the vision is for you and for your life, I want to make sure that we help you to achieve that. So if you do need support, you know where to find me. With all that being said, I will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.